Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Teresa and today I'm doing my May wrap up. Okay guys, so like I said, today we're talking about my May books. It is currently June 5th. While I didn't really read anything till the second half of the month, I had probably one of the best reading months I've had in a very long time. So what I did for May was I didn't have a set TBR. Basically, back in April, I posted my TBR. I had grand plans. I had like a couple readathons I was taking place in. I was doing my regular Jurassic TBR, which for those of you who don't know, that is my TBR game that I play every month. I will link it for you guys if you want to go check it out. So I had basically a pretty large stack of books for April that I wanted to complete. Unfortunately, about halfway through April, I had some family stuff going on. If you guys want an update, I'll link that video too. I did an update kind of letting you all know where I was for like most of April and May. So I kind of hit this really major reading slump. I didn't watch Booktube, I didn't read any books, I didn't film, I didn't do anything. So I was just like not in the mood. I was just not in a great place. What I decided to do was just take the books that I didn't get to in April and just basically transfer them or roll them over into May, because I still really wanted to read pretty much all of the books that were on my TBR. I was very excited about all of them. And I was like, you know what, I don't have any other plans for May, so I might as well just roll them over and make them into my May TBR. In May, I mentioned that I didn't really read much. You know, I had some family stuff come up in April that really just put me in a major slump. I pretty much was doing nothing. Then about halfway through the month, I was contacted by my good friend Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and she was like, hey, do you want to buddy read with me? And I kind of thought about it for a while and I was like, I don't really know if I'm in the mood, but then I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's get myself back in the mood for reading. So we decided to read Miriam by Maysu Andrews. This is the sequel to Pharaoh's Daughter, which was my favorite book of last year. And so she reached out, she's like, hey, I'm gonna be reading it if you want to buddy read. So I was like, yeah, you know, let's do it. And I'm so glad I did, you guys, because that really gave me back my spark and my like, oh my gosh, I need to read, because reading heals the soul. So thank you, Katie, for initiating that, because I very much I needed that. Once I was like, yeah, I'm gonna start reading again and I really want to finish up these TBRs, you guys, I had probably the best reading month that I have had in a very long time. I had so many good books this month. Well, last month. It's actually, technically today is June 5th. So yeah, in May was amazing. Even though I really only read for the last 2 weeks or like the week and a half, I was able to pump out a lot of books and they were like almost all great. So I have been vlogging and I'm really trying to make sure that every time I read a book, I vlog my experience. That way my wrap-ups like today will not be crazy long. So to keep these videos fairly short, I'm going to try my best to just give a very brief description and my very minimal thoughts about the books. If you want to know more about them, they will be in my vlogs, which as of right now, I have a ton of footage, but I haven't posted anything yet. And I promise that I will get these videos out to you guys, because I want to share my thoughts on these books. So I will do my best to keep this short and sweet. It's still probably gonna be long because it's me and I talk a lot, apparently. Okay, if the angle or anything changed at all, is because this is actually a clip I'm inserting from the end of the video. Now I'm inserting it to the beginning of the video. Reason being is I pretty much talked for like half an hour, and probably not, like more like, but like seriously like 20 minutes about this next book, or this first book I'm gonna talk to you about. And I'm like, I really need to like keep my videos shorter. But the first book that I read in the month of May was a buddy read with Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and that was Miriam by Maysu Andrews. This was a 5-star read, and I can say probably my favorite of the month, and I can also say it's gonna be one of my favorites of the year, because it was so good. So this it's a follow-up from Pharaoh's Daughter. This follows Miriam, who is the sister of Moses. And this book was really interesting because this is during the time of the Israel's exodus from Egypt, when Moses came back from being in the wilderness for a long time and basically said, you know, let my people go. And Pharaoh was like, no. And then there was all these plagues. And then he's like, will you let my people go now? And he's like, no. And then there's more plagues. And then finally he was like, yes. And yeah, this book was really, really good. It follows Miriam, who is, like I said, Moses' sister, One of the things about this book that really shocked me, but like is actually biblically accurate, was the fact that they're like old people. Miriam and her siblings, Aaron and Moses, they're like in their 80s. And I get so, like, I keep thinking that they're so much younger. And I have Prince of Egypt, that movie, to blame. Because in that movie, they are younger. But in reality, they were older. They were not young. Moses was in the wilderness for a very long time. Like, he had kids, like a family, before he came back to Egypt. So it was really interesting seeing them as older characters and having to remind myself that, yeah, that's actually biblically accurate. The picture that I hadn't had in my head was incorrect. This follows Miriam. So Miriam is she actually was I'm gonna keep doing that, mixing the two up. She was Israel's first prophetess. And this is her story. At the beginning of the book, she feels super close to God, and El Shaddai is the name that they use for him. And then Moses comes, and all of a sudden, El Shaddai's presence shifts and changes, and it's not the same as it was, and she feels abandoned and she feels lost. And Moses is coming and saying, God revealed a new name to me, and he now wants us to call him Yahweh. That's this is his secret name that he revealed to me in the bush. And she's jealous because she's like, I've always been the one that was connected with God. I'm the one that he always spoke to. Why all of a sudden now has he left me and gone to you? And so it's really her struggle with her bitterness and trying to understand her, growing her faith and changing the way that she views God and that she views her relationship with God. It was really beautifully written. There's a character named Her, it's Her, as in Her. I don't know if that's how it's spelled, because I listened to it on audiobook, but that's how it's pronounced, Her. But he was an older man, and he is freaking adorable, and I love him so much. He's probably like one of my favorite characters ever now, because he was just such a sweet, loving character. He comes through about halfway through the book, and I absolutely adored him. Anyways, this book, it definitely takes place during the plagues, and so you're seeing all of the plagues take place in Egypt, and it's really interesting, like the way that Masu Andrews writes her stories. And I've literally only read 2 of them at this point, but I can tell that she's already like an amazing author who I plan on reading a whole lot from. The way she writes is such descriptive that you really can feel it and sense it. And when she was talking about the plagues, it was really interesting, because the thing that really stuck out to me was like the plague of the frogs. So if you guys don't know about all the plagues, the Israelites, Moses came and God spoke to him and said, you're gonna like lead my people out of slavery. And so he went to Pharaoh and was like, hey, Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh was like, no, they're my slaves. I'm going to do whatever I want with them. And so God sent plagues to basically punish Pharaoh. And I can't remember, I think there's 7. I can't remember how many there were, but it was very interesting to see it play out. And kind of the contrast between what God was doing and then what their Egyptian magicians were doing, and how they were kind of not combating, but how the Egyptians were trying to be like, oh, it's just magic. Like, this is not an all-powerful God. And the cultural stuff in this book, the historical stuff in this book is beautiful and brilliant. There's parts where they're talking about the plague of frogs, and I was always like, that wouldn't be too bad. Like, they're just frogs. I like frogs. Frogs are cool. But the way she's describing it, I'm like, yeah, that would be nasty, because like you literally cannot, you wake up and you're like, you can't walk without stepping on frogs, and they're like squishing, and whoa, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that would be really gross. The gnats, the hail, when like the spirit of death came and they had to put the lamb's blood on their houses, I was just like, oh buddy, it gave me chills. It was powerful and beautiful and sad. It's so sad. Like, she has a way of just making these characters, or not characters, but like historical figures, come to life in a way that I've never really experienced before. And they're like living, breathing people, and gave them depth and gave them backstories and history. And oh my gosh, it was so good. So if you like historical fiction, if you like biblical fiction, check this book out. It was beautiful. And again, the actual historical elements of this book I thought were done very, very well. Talking about Egypt, talking about the trade between Egypt and the different people groups in Egypt, and just wow, kind of how the differences between the Egyptian culture and the Israelite culture, even though the Israelites were Egyptian slaves, and how that played out and interacted, and the different types of slaves that you would have. And it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. yeah, very, very highly recommend this book. If you want to know more of my thoughts, like I said, check out my vlogs. Thank you again, Katie, for recommending this and having me buddy read with you, because this kicked off a very great reading month. Like I said, 5-star, and I have a couple more 5 stars to come. So I want to send you back now to me a few minutes ago, talking about the rest of the books that I read this month. The second book I read in the month of May was Into the Book of Light by Ted and Kara Decker. So that's a father and daughter duo. This is book number 1 in the Dream Traveler's Quest, and this was for the Christian Fiction Readathon for First in a Series. This was so good. Okay, I did not realize when I picked this up that this world ties into a lot of Ted Decker's other books. So similar in the vein of Stephen King, that like pretty much all, or like Brandon Sanderson, where all of his books kind of exist in the same universe or the same world. Ted Decker kind of does the same thing with his fantasy type books, whereas they're all kind of connected, some very openly, like this book was very blatantly connected to the Circle series that he did, and other books you just kind of see like little inklings, but this one was very much so connected to the Circle series, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I did not realize that that was the case, but this is about a young boy who, I believe his mother died, so it's just him and his dad. And this young boy has a lot of fears due to the fact that his mom had, I think she died in a car accident or something. So he has a lot of fears. He's bullied pretty dang heavily, and he just is very lost. And his dad kind of really doesn't get him. He doesn't really understand. So he ends up being chased by these bullies, and he finds refuge in the library, and he finds this book. And when he touches this book, he is transported to this other world. And what I didn't realize going into it was that other world is the same world from the Circle series, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited! I read these books, the Circle series. It's black, red, white. He like literally wrote this whole trilogy within, like, it all came out in a year, and then a few years later we had green. So the way that this works is like the most amazing thing ever, because you can start at black and you can end it green, or you can start at green and end it white. It's literally a circle the way you read it. It continues the story. It's so cool. But he's done a ton of stuff. Like, I've read every single book that's set, or not every single, but like almost every single book that is set in this universe. He had like middle grade or YA books that came out that were set in this universe that I absolutely adored. So now there's middle grade books that are set in the universe, and I just, oh man, it was so nostalgic for me to like be back in this place and with these characters, or like not, there are some characters, there are these like fuzzy bat-like creatures. They said they're not bats, they're Rausch. I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced, but they're like these little white fuzzy bats that they are protectors. And then you have like the bad evil bats with like, they look like bats, and they're black and they've got like red eyes, and they're the Shadakai, I think is how you pronounce it. I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced. But anyways, this young boy gets sucked into this world, and he's like, hey, and then he's met by these Rausch, and they're like, hey, by the way, you have been chosen, like you're the chosen one, and you have to go on this quest. And he's like, me? Like, I am weak, I'm nothing, I'm scared of everything. Like, how can I be chosen to do this? And so, yeah, book 1 is just his first quest, and then it continues from there. I think it's like a 4-book series or something, but so good. Such a sweet story too. Yeah, I mean, they literally wrote these books for young kids, because they're like, we need good, wholesome stories that are just fun, that they're well told, and we don't have to worry about any garbage in them and any stuff that we don't want our kids reading. His daughters have kids now, and they're like, we want to write books that our kids will love, that's good literature, that parents can not have to worry about anything weird being in there, that their kids can read. And I highly, highly recommend these books. They were so good. So anyway, well, Book of Light, and then the other one I read I'll talk about a little bit later. But very, very cute. I'm really excited to continue the series. Okay, that was 4 stars. Then we have the next book I read, which is The Bookshire. Actually, I have it. Let me show you, because like I actually have a pile here to show you. I should probably do that. This was the next book I read, The Butcher and the Wren. This is by Elena Urquhart. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name completely correctly, but she is the co-host to the true crime podcast, my favorite true crime podcast, which is Morbid. Elena is an autopsy technician in real life, and like she also does the podcast. This book is about a medical examiner. So I really, really liked the stuff that she talks about, because obviously Elena, like, she knows what she's doing. This is what she does for a job. This is about a woman named Ren, who is a medical examiner, and there are these women who are being murdered, and they are attributing it to a serial killer. The serial killer is named the Butcher of, I think it's the Butcher of the Bayou, I think, because this takes place down in Louisiana. And basically, while Ren is hunting and trying to find the serial killer is hunting and trying to find her. And there is a plot twist in the middle of this book, or not a plot twist, but a reveal in the middle of the book that I literally had to stop and go back and read it again, because I was like, did I really just read what I read? Like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? This was a great book. This was a great book. 5 stars, for sure. 5 stars. Oh my gosh, it's not even that long. It's a great little thriller. It just, yeah. It's in Louisiana. It's very atmospheric. It's very, like, you get a lot of the, I feel like you get the technical terms and them talking about the autopsies and police procedurals and, like, what the medical examiner would actually go out to the crime scene with the body and all that kind of stuff, while it's still told in a way that is understandable to, like, the lay person. So think if you're, like, watching, like, CSI or something, like, it's kind of similar to that. It's like a dual perspective. You have the perspective of the serial killer and you have the perspective of the medical examiner. The serial killer in this book, 1000% to me, is a mixture of, I can never remember his name, but the guy from American Psycho and Joe Goldberg. I think it's Joe Goldberg, right? I've never actually read the books, but from what I've heard from the book You, I think it's by Carolyn Kepnes, right? Where he's like the stalker guy. This is like what I thought of when I was reading this. Now, again, I haven't read You, so I don't know for sure, but just everything that I've heard about this character, I was like, bro, this is him. He's very suave. He's very, like, clean. He's very meticulous, and he's very, oh, it was so good. You know, this book was not terribly gory, considering that it's a serial killer and they're doing autopsies and stuff. It wasn't really gory at all. I didn't find it, honestly, I found it more creepy than gross. So definitely psychological, definitely atmospheric. The twists and the turns and kind of the cat and mouse game that they're playing was great. I loved it. Now, I gotta say, I did read some reviews on this, people saying that, like, oh, there was no depth to it, or the characters, you don't really get to know them that well. And maybe that's the case, but, like, for me, honestly, it didn't matter because I was so engrossed in the story. And I honestly think, like, Elena is a very good storyteller, even on her podcast. So I loved it. I was sucked in from the beginning. I read it super quick. I read it all the way through. I didn't have any problem with it. I didn't notice anything these other people were pointing out, like, oh, it's like tell not, or it's more tell than show. I personally didn't feel that way. Maybe it is, but if it is, it didn't bother me. Like, I still loved it. So I think it's a very digestible thriller. I think it's a very easy one to get into if you are someone who is looking to get into the genre. This would definitely be one I would recommend, but I can say this is probably going to be a favorite of the year. Like, maybe not the favorite, but it's definitely in my top 5 at the moment. Such a good book. Okay, next I have the other book that was written by Ted Dekker and his other daughter, Rochelle Dekker, and that is The Boy Who Fell from the Stars. This is the book 1 in And They Found Dragons. This is a sci-fi series, so the other book that I was talking about was a fantasy. This is a sci-fi, and they're both about this size. So I don't know if this is technically considered middle grade, if it's more chapter book. There's no pictures of anything. I always, like, get confused on what's considered middle grade and what's considered chapter book. It's 171 pages, but this is all about, it's like a post-apocalyptic world. I'll just read a little bit of what the back says. It is said a child will lead them, but lead them where? Jack is just 12, born on an ark orbiting Earth among 169 survivors of a global apocalypse who eagerly await the planet's restoration so they can return to the surface. With supplies dangerously low, the time for waiting is over. Humanity must return now or die among the stars. Unfortunately, there is a problem, a big one. Dragons have inexplicably risen from the Earth's ashes. Worse, they emit a global toxin deadly to all over the age of puberty. After much debate, the ARC's leaders realize that humanity's only hope is to send teams of specifically trained children to hunt and eliminate the Dragon Queen. But Jack is frail and deemed unworthy for the dangerous mission. So begins a tale that leads readers, young and old alike, on a journey with Jack, the child who will lead them all in the most unlikely of ways. A journey to an Earth where they could not have imagined, an Earth where humanity's fears takes physical form as dragons that only can be defeated through a love that casts out all fear. Such a good book. What did I rate this one? This was a 4.5, so I actually like this one a little bit better than the other one, even though I was like super loving the nostalgia of being back in the universe. This one is, like I said, it's a sci-fi, so you start out on the ship. You really don't see much of the dragons in this book. This is really the setup of the story. I really like this because the main character, Jack, he has anemia, and so it's interesting to kind of see his perspective of a disabled character. And like it says, he is deemed unworthy due to the fact that he is anemic, but he has something very special about him that makes him very necessary for survival for the human race. And it kind of just, builds up the beginning of the story. You're learning about Jack, you're learning about the world, like what happened. And so Jack has a really good friend, a young girl who is one of the characters who is chosen to be the Dragon Slayers. And again, they're these children that are trained pretty much like Navy SEALs to take out these dragons. It's fun, it's heartwarming, it's cute. This also has a bully situation in here. The dragon things are really interesting. Breathe toxic air that only these kids can survive. Like once you hit puberty, like it kills you. Every mission that has gone before they have all died, and there's like a supernatural element to the dragons almost. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. I liked it a lot. Highly recommend, and I cannot wait to pick up the rest of the series. Okay guys, this video is long because, they all are. I don't even know if I'm even telling you like my thoughts or whatever, but I'm doing my best. After that, I had a 3-star read. And this book I did not read for a readathon at all. I don't know if I told you that last one I read for the Christian fiction one because it was a book under 250 pages. So that's what I read that one for. This one is just a book I've had on my shelves for a while and I felt like I was in the mood to read it, so I picked it up. This was only a 3-star for me. This isn't really anything that like interested me too much. This is called, is it Harders? I don't know exactly how you would pronounce that. I mean, it's interesting cover though, because like on this end, when you flip it over, you get that. There's the back. And then when you open it up, it's a very beautiful book. This is the cover, and then you have the end pages. So this is a graphic novel, if you guys can't tell that. This is a graphic novel that is Afrofuturism. Here is kind of a glimpse at the artwork. It's interesting. Not really. I mean, I think that it's well done. Like the art is good art. It's just not my style of art. But this is a Afrofuturism novel. I actually won this in a Goodreads giveaway. This is this magical world where there's all these different creatures. I mean, you can tell from the cover. You have like humans, but they're not like humans like we are. Like humans all have feathers and stuff. You have flying creatures, you have spirit ships, you have robots, you have this weird dude, elementals, lots of different things in here. The story follows the main character here, and his world was destroyed, or his island, because they're in the Caribbean, or the fictional Caribbean, where this hurricane came and destroyed his island. And so this guy kind of rises up and was like, hey, I can make all these machines and we can fix the land. If, you just come to me and I will fix everything for you. But people start disappearing and stuff starts going a bit haywire. And so this main character is trying to like figure out what's going on and save his island, basically. It says it's a brilliant fusion of science fiction, satire, and high adventure that explores an alternate world inspired by the culture of Barbados. So if you are into, you know, stuff, the islands and Barbados lore, this might be a book that you would find interesting. Again, it was okay. It was a 3-star, which for me, a 3-star is, I don't hate it. I didn't love it. It's okay. Like, I really have no opinion on it one way or the other. It was a little weird in some spots, but yeah, I don't know. I have no thoughts other than it was interesting. I'd be kind of curious to know how much of this is connected to actual Barbados lore. You have like almost like demon creatures. I don't know if these are like Janku or Janaku. I don't know if those are like actual creatures from Barbados lore, folklore or not. I don't know. But Afro-Caribbean fantasy sci-fi. That's what this was. I read it. Just, okay, cool, whatever. I'm actually gonna unhaul it because, again, it didn't really do anything for me, and hopefully it can find a home that loves it because it is a really beautiful book. Okie dokie. The next book I have to show you guys is Anna Was Here, and this is by Jane Kurtz. So I read this for the Christian Fiction Readathon. I was not sure going into this if this was a Christian book or not. The only thing that kind of keyed me off to it was it talks about Sunday school and church. But yes, this is definitely, I would say, is considered Christian. The little girl, Anna, her father is a minister. And basically it starts out with like, she's in the safety club. She's super cute, by the way. I love this little girl. She is all about being prepared and being safe because she lives in Colorado and they had like massive wildfires in Colorado. And so she's very much in the safety club and she's like prepared for everything. But what she's not prepared for is the fact that they have to all of a sudden move to, is it Kansas? Yeah, they moved to Kansas. And then it says, unluckily, Anna isn't ready for cousins, lost cats, water balloons, and rotten eggs, peculiar relatives, blisters, emus, missing moms, church potlucks, and tornadoes. So this was just a fun little story of this little girl whose family has to move to this small town in Kansas. It's her father's hometown. There's a lot of family drama. There's a lot of like strife because her grandmother was one of the children, like they all lived on this farm, and she kind of left and went to California and did her own thing. And so there's always been this tension between the family. She has like all these great aunts, and the great aunts are amazing. I love them in this book. They were cracking me up. They're just so like snarky and funny. And I don't know, I wish I could like give you more of this, but she basically goes here and pretty instantly has a rival. She finds out there's this kid that doesn't like her and is kind of picking on her, and so she's like, you know, trying to get back at him. And then she has her cousin that she really looks up to. She's like a year older or so, and they live on this farm, and so she's learning all about farm life. And it was really cute because a lot of it I could picture. Like my boyfriend Josh, his mom grew up on a farm, and last year and the year before we went back and visited back in Nebraska, and we went back and visited, and so I was really able to picture like, this is probably very similar to what this looked like, a very tiny town where everybody knows everybody. It was just a very cute, fun middle grade. Like I said, you're dealing with this girl who is dealing with the unknown, with uncertainty, with feeling kind of lost, and like no one's listening to her anymore. Like she feels like her father has kind of put the church above her and the family, and she's really struggling with that, struggling with trying to fit into this new place, and just wanting to go home to Colorado, back to her old life. But yeah, things happen. Like again, you have emus and tornadoes. This definitely gave me a sunshine feeling. That was what the prompt was for. Just a sweet, loving, wholesome book. The author herself was actually born in Portland, Oregon, which is where I live, which is pretty dang cool. When she was 2 years old, she moved to Ethiopia. Her parents moved them to Ethiopia to work for a Presbyterian church. She's lived in North Dakota, Colorado, Illinois, Kansas, and now she's back in Portland, Oregon, the author, at least at the time this book was written. So I thought it was pretty cool. There was kind of a connection to home. And then even though my boyfriend's family is in Kansas or Nebraska, this takes place in Kansas, I feel like I could still kind of feel the farm, and they're talking about the tornado warnings and different things that they have to worry about, the wind and just cows and like all sorts of things. It was really, really cute book. So this one was a 4-star. Next up, I have a 4.5. I literally only had 1 3. Everything else was a 4 or higher this month. Like that is so great. The next book I read was The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lundstrom. This is like a mystery. This was just a straight up mystery that I really liked it. It's very gothic. It gave me a lot of Turn of the Key vibes. Kind of a little bit of gothic, a little bit of Jane Eyre, a little bit of Turn of the Key, kind of that Victorian era, or I guess, I don't know if it would be Victorian or I'm really bad with like my timelines, but they don't have cars, they have horses, a horse and cart. So whatever like era that would be. Anyways, it's some kind of there gothic in England's countryside. This woman she basically goes to this hall or this home to be a governess for this young boy. And again, like I said, very turn of the screw vibes here. But when she arrives, like, she kind of has secrets of her own. She's recently widowed and she goes to be a governess to this home, and she finds this boy and his mother. And it's like very minimal staff. So this very large estate, and she's very confused, like, why is there so little staff? You know, my previous jobs, we had much more, think like Downton Abbey kind of situation. That's kind of what I was picturing in my head. And the townspeople are like, oh, that place is cursed. Like, we don't want anything to do with them. And the mother is acting very, very strangely. And she keeps saying, like, you can't let my son out of your sight. Like, he's not allowed to go to town. He's not allowed outside. And just things are weird. And there's a lot of rumors of ghosts, and some of the employees are talking about things that have gone missing and just weird happenings. And everyone just seems shady and has secrets. I don't know why I'm holding this, because this is my notebook, but anyways, it was really good. Reading this book up until probably like the last chapter or two, I thought it was going to be a 5-star. Unfortunately for me, the ending flopped a little. Not like horribly. I rated this a 4.75. I normally don't give quarter-star ratings, but this one I think it deserved it, because I was like, it's not a 4.5, it's higher, but it's not quite a 5. So it was 4.75. While I thought the reveal was good, I feel like the ending just dragged a little bit. Like I don't know, I feel like it just tried to do too much, or it just went a little bit too long. Like maybe it could have been shortened a little bit. Or the mystery couldn't have been the mystery could have not been revealed as soon. Like the mystery maybe could have gone a little bit deeper and then the reveal. I don't know. I just was not vibing with the ending. I liked the reveal. I thought it was interesting. I did not see it. Like I did not guess what it was, but I thought it was a very, very solid mystery. I really liked it. It was really creepy. It was very gothic. I felt the atmosphere. I was definitely like, what is happening? There was multiple times that I was just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, who are you people? Like, what is the mystery? I have to know. It kept my attention, like I said, to the very, very end. I really can't put my finger on what at the end I didn't like. It wasn't that I didn't like it. I just felt like it just felt a little flat for me. I don't know. I was a little disappointed with the ending, which was sad, because this whole time I'm thinking, this is going to be a 5-star. Like, this is a great, great book. So I would still recommend it, though, if you are a fan of mystery, of kind of like gothic Victorian era mystery type of stories with like possibly, you know, ghosty things, maybe ghosts, we don't know. Yeah, I would recommend reading this, because I thought it was good. The last book that I read for the month of May, so we are at the end finally, was a 5-star. And that was Echoes Among Stones. Echoes Among the Stones by Jamie Jo Wright. This author is a favorite. I can now say that now that I've read like 4 of her books, I think, I can 100% say that she is definitely a favorite author. This was a really good one. I don't know if I would say this is my favorite of her books, but I would say I think this might be like my second favorite. My first one is definitely Souls of the Lost Lake, but I think this one is up there with that. All of Jamie Jo Wright's books are dual timeline, dual perspective. So you have mysteries in the past, mysteries in the future that are always connected to each other. It's kind of like a historical fiction type of thing, historical romantic suspense situations, and it's always with some sort of paranormal aspect. So I always like to say questionably paranormal, because going into the book, you never know going into the story, is it a ghost? Is it some kind of supernatural thing? Or is it actually a human? Like, what is the secret? What is the creepy, eerie thing that's happening? This book, I will say, heavily, heavily, heavily deals with the topic of grief and healing through your grief. And this just hit me just right. Like, as I said, you guys, I've been dealing with grief. I've been dealing with a lot of pain from losing my family members, my grandparents in their home. And this book is about learning to live through your grief, to be able to forgive and let go and move forward and not let your grief hold you and keep you stagnant in one place. So this is a murder mystery. So you're following a woman named Aggie. Agatha is her name. And her career, it says, is unceremoniously ended by her own mistakes. She finds herself traveling to Wisconsin, where her grandmother, Mumsy, lives alone in her vintage, though very outdated home. Aggie didn't plan for how eccentric Mumsy has become, obsessing over an old unsolved crime scene, even going so far as to recreate it in a dollhouse. Like, that is... Mysteries seem to follow Aggie when she finds work as a secretary, helping to restore the flooded historical part of the town's cemetery. Forced to work with the puzzling yet attractive archaeologist, she exhumes the past's secrets and unwittingly uncovers a crime that some will go to any length to keep hidden, even if it means silencing Aggie. In 1946, Imogene Grayson works in a beauty salon but has her sights set on Hollywood, but coming home to discover her younger sister's body in the attic changes everything. Unfamiliar with the burgeoning world of forensic science, and as a woman not particularly welcome into the investigation, Imogene is nonetheless determined to stay involved. As her sister's case grows cold, Imogene vows to find justice no matter the cost. And of course, like I said, the two cases are intertwined. This was so great because the 1946, that would have been like around the time that my grandparents were born. So it was really interesting to get 40s language, like kind of the slang terms and kind of how that the men and women would talk to each other when they're flirting and stuff like that was really fun. This takes place right after World War II. So you are dealing with the aftermath of the men coming home and having to deal with what, and obviously now we know it's PTSD and people who had to sell their farms and lose their jobs to like help with the war effort. So you get a lot of that in this book as far as the historical aspect goes. I think that was super, super fun. But then you have this creepy mystery of like who killed the sister and what's going on in the current timeline where Mumsy is obsessed over this case, literally has a dollhouse. And the coolest thing about this, you guys, is there actually is a real life person who did this. They would reenact crime scenes in dollhouse form so people could study them, for detectives and forensic scientists and all that could study these dollhouses to better help them understand real life crime scenes. It's like so cool. And then the attention to detail in this was amazing. I loved the character of Mumsy. She is adorable, and just like her name sounds, like she's very posh, very proper, an elderly woman that is not afraid to scheme and get her way, and she's very Mumsy, She's not British. I don't know why that sounded British, but she's obviously was like probably a late teen, early 20s in the 1940s. So yeah, like I said, it very much talks about grief and just kind of letting the Lord guide you through it and trusting him with your grief and letting him work through it, and you not being stuck and letting life pass you by because you're so set and obsessed with what happened in the past. It was beautiful. It made me cry for sure. If you guys, like I said, want a little bit more in-depth my thoughts on this, definitely check out my vlogs that are coming. Very much would recommend. 5 stars, just heartwarming, brilliant, 1940s vibes. It was great. I did start the book Wishlist by Nadine Barnes, and at this time, today is the 5th of June. I have finished it. Spoiler alert. 5 stars. Guys, I had 1, 2, 3 5 stars in May, 1 4.5, 1 4.75, and a 5-star that I started in May but just ended in June. So like, amazing. So with this book, my Christian fiction readathon is complete. I read every single book on it. I'm so excited. The only book that I did not get to for my Jurassic TBR was Muzzled, which if you guys, another spoiler, but you can check it out here, my July or my June TBR, Muzzled is actually on there again, so I should hopefully get to it this time around, and then I've read every single book that I was supposed to read for my TBRs in April. And I'm real excited about that. Great reading month, great reading month. I mean, 3 5 stars. Guys, like, hello, that's the best I've had like in forever. So here are all the physical books that I read. I mean, again, I had another one about this size right here that I returned, and then the rest I read on audiobook. All of these, except for this one, was a win. But I mean, even this wasn't like a failure. It was a 3. Like, it was just okay. It was interesting while I read it. I'm not mad about it. So like I had an amazing reading month, you know, like it was great, guys. It was so good. So yeah, these are the books that I read in May. Like I said, besides like those couple other ones, I am like, okay, please let June top this month, because coming out of a reading slump, going into this was like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. So I'm really excited to continue reading and moving forward in June. I would love to know your guys' thoughts. What do you think? Have you read any of the books that I talked about? Do any of them now sound interesting that you want to pick up maybe? Like if you do, I would love, please talk to me. I need to talk to people about these books. I really do. So yeah, in the comments, let me know how your reading month went in May. Was it as good as mine? I really hope so, because I'm just so blessed to have had such a good reading month after having just some really crappy stuff happen in my personal life, to come back and be like, yes, books are good. I love books. So yeah, if you guys liked this video, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Of course, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, if you want to see more. Like I said, vlogs are coming soon. I promise they're coming soon. If you guys have nothing else to say, just want to let me know that you were here, go ahead and leave a bird emoji in the comments for Butcher and the Wren, because the Wren is a bird. So yes, leave that in the comments. Let me know you're here. Like, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again. I know I've said this in a recent video, but thank you all so much for all of your support on my subscribers. I'm slowly growing and it just makes me so happy. Thank you again, guys, for watching. I hope you have a great June, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.